Today I am working on a 6x6 canvas panel. I previously used it for a ink and graphite experiment that failed, and now it's getting a second chance at life. I'm also using this book that I found at Hobby Lobby. They also have it on Amazon for under $10, but I was referencing this book to use it as kind of a guideline for some of the color mixing ideas that I was going to use for this portrait. I also pulled a source online. Actually, I think I created this source using an AI app. So far, I've done a couple, actually, quite a few of my images I've created using AI. I find them unique, and I can kind of find what kind of the facial expressions that I'm looking for, or just something a little bit different. I also use the images that I find on Pinterest or some of the what is it, Pexels, or some of those copyright-free imaging apps. So this one was an AI app, I believe, and I didn't need to worry about any copyrights and such. So that's why I've started using or creating my own. So I started this with the canvas panel, and I sketched over the top of the ink and graphite. I outlined it with Sharpie, and then I started in with the paint. I mixed up some blues, and then I wanted to add more of a peachy color for some of the highlights on the facial highlights. I definitely didn't nail this one, but I certainly learned a lot, and it was a lot of fun. I started off really nervous though, because every time I start a new canvas or even a new sketchbook, it's almost guaranteed that my nerves will get the best of me. But that said, I do definitely try to embrace it and remind myself that it's fine not to be perfect. And I also have many instances that I look back on something and that I absolutely hated in the moment, but found a new appreciation for hours or days later. So anyway, this is the portrait that I decided to do this week. I used those blue colors that I had mentioned before, kind of gave me a Nightmare Before Christmas Sally feel. I didn't intend that until the end. I noticed that because her hair was kind of a reddish color and her skin was blue, and I love Nightmare Before Christmas, so it worked out. It made me think of a previous portrait that I did. So a couple of years ago when I started painting again, always been into art, always been into drawing, took a giant chunk of time out of my life where I didn't do really any of that. But came back to it and decided to enter a self-portrait contest. And I didn't win. Nothing happened with that actually, but it was the first time I had put any of my art out into the world in years, decades even. So it was a lot of fun, but that self-portrait, I also used a blue skin tone. So I will try to link that here somewhere. I have it on my Instagram page. So if I can't put it in the video, because I'm still learning these apps, but if I can't put it in the video, then I'll go ahead and link it in the description below so you can kind of see where I started with the portraits and hopefully the direction that I'm headed in. So I am blocking in the hair right now. I feel like there's certain things here as I look back and kind of reflect on the process and things. There's definitely some things that I would have done differently or that I may do differently in the future. But like I said, this was completely an experiment, something that got me once again outside of my comfort zone. And in the end, I actually really enjoy the way that it turned out. It was something newer. Lately, I've been focusing a lot on drawing and using the alcohol markers, the grayscale alcohol markers in my sketchbooks. But I found a couple larger size sketchbooks. So I've been moving from my tiny, like 3.9, 3, 4 inch squared sketchbook, I've moved on to larger, like 9 by 12 sketchbooks. And I think I even have like a 14 by 17 or something. But I've moved on to those larger sizes, and that has opened up a new experience for me. But as far as that goes, the markers that I'm using, I don't know if it's just because they're the cheaper markers from Hobby Lobby or if it's the paper I'm using. I really like watercolor paper, and I know that really absorbs a lot. So it's probably a mix of both. I also have a mixed media sketchbook as well that I will use markers on. But all that said, um, I have started with these larger images, and instead of using the markers, I've started picking up more of my paints. So this one, I'm using acrylic paints. I have some in my sketchbooks. I like to go with gouache. I feel like the paper, it holds it better. And it's just fun and kind of a cheaper way to experiment with the color mixing and just laying down the paint and how I seeing if I can convey what I envision to the final result. So anyway, this image, with the grays and the blues, I definitely want to try something along these lines again because I don't really like the colors that I placed on her hand. And you can see right under her chin, there's kind of a red mark with the white blotch right there. And I forgot about that. That's a part of her palm that I completely forgot needed some color to it. So I end up adding that later on. I probably noticed here when I started adding in those darker values. But I had a lot of fun with this and just adding those values and trying out the different colors to see what worked. And then after I added all the colors, I brought in the Sharpie again and probably another one of my Micron pens, the waterproof ones, to just add some extra details. I didn't record all of that. I think I got to a point in the recording where I was going to stop with the portrait, let it dry, and do some other things. But then I think something on her shoulder called to me, and I had to go back in and I started going again, but I didn't end up recording that part. So thanks for being here. I will stop chit-chatting now, and you can just watch the rest of my process. I'm just adding in some darker colors, lightening up some places, experimenting with some things, and I look forward to next our next portrait practice. All right. Bye.